Good afternoon. My name is jonasbn. I'm going to do this in English. To those of you who are confused about my weird accent, I'm Danish, but just want to check. Does anybody want this presentation done in Danish? I thought so. So we'll stick to English. Okay, I'm going to do a presentation of a cloud solution from ActiveState. Give it a run over, a little demo, which will probably crash and burn. But let's see what happens. It was quite interesting to see the presentations yesterday. My German is not that good, but I'm really happy that the German language have nice words like continuous deployment, and we have those in Danish as well. So on those topics of continuous deployment and all that stuff, this is a sort of a solution to some of those problems. It might not be the perfect solution, it might not be the only solution, I hope it's not, but it's at least a solution, so let's have a look. Okay, I'm jonasbn, like almost everywhere on CPAN and stuff. I'm a long-time Perl and web developer. I'm an open source CPAN contributor, a lot via my freelance business in my own company. But right now I'm employed with DK Hostmaster, which is the TLD for Denmark, where I work with Perl development as a developer and a team lead for a small team of developers. I have no affiliation with ActiveState, but I'm going to mention the name quite a lot throughout this presentation. So, my developer needs. I need easy access to platforms, runtimes, and frameworks all the time. I need the least possible gap between development, test, and production, and in order to have like some kind of sane environment to work in. And I really need minimal differences between deployed code and the code in my editor. There's nothing as bad as looking at something in your editor and it's actually not the code you have in production. I hate when that happens. And I need to be able to reproduce stuff for transparency, so it's easier to find bugs and locate and extend the code base, locate bugs and other issues. So what do we have today? We have unit tests. We have mocked objects and classes and stubs and whatnot. We have local servers and emulators. A lot of really good stuff in our toolchain today. And we have dedicated environments like development, test, and production, which need to be maintained. We saw the presentation yesterday, which would show how many environments it would actually require to be able to fill all the requirements coming from outside. And then we have a virtualization, which is a really nifty thing if you want to do this. And we have code. We have lots and lots of code. And this all gives us a complexity. That means we require magic, and we rely on tribal knowledge. So if you want something done, you have to talk to that guy in the other office. He's the only one who knows it, or he's been working with it for 10 years, something like that. And that's really annoying. And as a developer, it's I don't like to say it, but we rely on the operations people a lot. Don't tell them. And we need to jump through hoops. That can be like buying cake for the operations people or something like that in order to get stuff to work. But we have a lot of complexity and a lot of weird things we do in order to get things to work. So we have a silver bullet. Somebody offers us a silver bullet. They call it the cloud. Fantastic. This is the buzzword presentation, by the way, for the workshop. So what is the cloud? And what problem does the cloud solve? And what needs does does it address anyway? Because I think it's very important to look at what needs we actually have in order to evaluate a cloud solution. So let's talk cloud. Amazon Web Services is really hard to not look into. You cannot really ignore Amazon and EC2 if you discuss the cloud. So let's have a look at Amazon's take on these things. I went to a presentation at the Internetdagarna, lite svenska, a little Swedish, in Stockholm, and they had a keynote speaker from Amazon, Dr. Matt Wood, who's on Twitter, as you can see. He's a technology evangelist with Amazon, and he's working with Amazon Web Services. And the presentation is on YouTube, but I'll take some key points for you here. He talks about heavy lifting. When we work with software development, the problem getting from idea to actually a product is 70% heavy lifting, and that's interacting with operations people, interacting with all sorts of other resources, and looking into a lot of problems which has nothing to do with software development directly. It's nothing we can solve as software developers on our own necessarily, and that's capacity planning and all sorts of stuff, administration, setting up environments and stuff like that. And that's 70% according to Amazon. And what we really want to do is the 30%, which is like doing new releases and logging and focus on the product and monitor it and maintain it. And that's the 30% we really want to be in. That's our comfort zone, so to speak. So we have this 30-70 divide, according to Dr. Matt Wood. And we have IT infrastructure friction, meaning that it's really, really difficult to get these things to run smoothly unless your operations people are really, really good. And he says you should focus on your core competences so you can deliver value. And that's really the primary key for software developers. We are the ones who build stuff. We should focus on delivering value. So, but Amazon EC2, as Perl develops, does not really get us there. There's a lot of friction still, and it's really elastic, but hey, it doesn't really get us there. So, luckily, ActiveState have introduced this Stackato platform, which is a so-called microcloud based on a project called Venona, which they acquired, and it's based on the open source project called CloudFoundry. And you can find more on these URLs. I'm going to go over it now. So, Stackato is a microcloud, as I said. Its current version is 2.8.2. It was released last year in February, so it's on the 29th of February, so it won't be a year older. Oh, somebody will have to calculate how old it is. Okay, and it's really, really strong in the platform as a service, which is one of these buzzwords called PaaS, where you talk about private and public PaaS, where you have a private platform and a public platform. So you can actually have a cloud solution in-house. It does not have to go to Amazon or be on the outside of your infrastructure if that's what you, if you're not interested in that. And they support several languages, frameworks, and what they call services, and I'll get back to that. This is sort of a diagram from ActiveState where it shows what it is. You have Nginx and Apache on the front. You have a lot of services, as they call it, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and others, and you have all the frameworks. For Perl people, we have Catalyst and Modulicious, and probably more will come. And we have Perl, Java, Ruby, Node, Erlang, whatever, in the language part. And this microcloud runs on Citrix, Vmware, and Amazon Web Services, and lots of other hypervisors or whatever, your virtual infrastructure. So it's actually easy to use everywhere, no matter what platform you're working on. And that's really, really nice. In the foundation, Stackato is actually just a Linux machine running Ubuntu, so you have still the freedom to tinker to some point, I guess. I'm not sure when ActiveState will stop you from saying we cannot support you anymore, you're on your own. But that will have to be tried. So I'm going to show you a brief demonstration saying hello world. So I'll just put this down, just a second. So what we have here is a basic modulicious light application, and it says in the top, hello Perl mongers. I expect you know modulicious already, so let's go have a look. Just a second. First, you can have several instances. You can have the microcloud running locally, like I do. Have a virtual machine in VMware, and Stackato to me is actually just a command line tool. What I can then do is I can point from this application, Mojo Hello World, I just showed you the code of, and then I can just point to a target, as it's called, and say I want to push it there.
Sorry, do you expect us to read it because it's not readable?
Oh, it's not?
No.
It's totally clear up here. Yeah, just a second.
Took a while until somebody noticed.
I had no problem. It's so which one do you want?
Visually disabled.
Light background.
Would you say like something?
Light background,
Light
second
background.
Or maybe more contrast.
Yeah.
He's singing.
How do you have PaaS?
Contrast. Look at the contrast. At the contrast bar.
That should work.
Maybe there's an apply button somewhere.
Yeah. You want to use Linux?
No.
Wenn man nicht set-b benutzt, dann weiß nicht, was es ist.
Yeah, just a second. Okay.
Thanks.
No problem. Just a second, I'm just switching back to the... Okay, where were we? Now I've targeted this microcloud I have running in a virtual machine on this machine here, and now I can do operations which I'm actually just in a directory which is a GitHub repository local, and I have my application here, and then I can interact with the microcloud. using the Stackato command line client. Okay, so it asks me whether I want to deploy from the current directory. I say yes. And it shows me a URL where it's going to be responding from, and it asks me whether I want to reserve some resources like memory and stuff like that, and whether I want to bind any services. This is just a hello world, so there's no need to spin up a MySQL or PostgreSQL or something like that for this. So now it's pushing the application to the cloud. And starting it. Then we have the same URL here. I've tested it earlier that it was not present. And it says hello Perl monkers. So now I've deployed the application simply from the repository on my workstation to this microcloud. And that means that this microcloud, if I targeted, for example, Amazon, it would simply be a matter of pointing to a Stackato instance under EC2 or somewhere else. Then I could point to, for example, a local VMware installation maintained by the operations people or something like that. The target is like really essential to where do I want this source code to go. So let's go back to the presentation. So target is where we want to deploy. We didn't go into the permission part, but actually you can specify who can log in, who can do what on a certain instance, and you can push an application, as I showed you. That's like a one-click deployment, which is pretty interesting. And you can do now it asks us a lot of questions, and we can put these in the configuration called Stackato YAML, which is then following the application, but it does not disturb the application. For modulicious, you would still be able to use Morbo or whatever when you're developing if you don't have access to a microcloud or don't want to, or want to do something else. So working with Stackato is actually non-intrusive in that sense that you don't have to change your Perl code in order to deploy it to Stackato. You have to add a few things outside the code which follows your application, but you don't have to change the code. And Stackato YAML is one of them, which is like a configuration file for the actual deployment. And with Stackato-n, you actually you will not get asked any questions during the deployment. So, as a developer, it's often difficult to get access to all the stuff you need, like logs and whether crashes happen, because operations people are in control of these things, and crash logs and files and whatnot. So from the Stackato command line application, I'm going to try to make up for the time we lost. I'm really sorry. So I won't show you these commands, but from the Stackato client, we can actually ask to get the logs as a developer. You don't have to log into the machine and do sudo and have access and all that in order to get access to a simple basic error log or something like that. You can actually just get it via the client. We can see what files have been deployed, and we can see how our application is set up in the microcloud. For operations, we can start and stop a service. Now I call it service an application, and we can restart it. But I don't have any experience as an operations person with a long-term running of these. But these are basic commands for starting and stopping, and you can actually do a lot of scaling and stuff like that. And there's one more thing. There's a management console, so instead of using the command line, we could do this. So here we have our application, Mojo Hello. It's currently started. We can restart it, we can stop it, and everything here. In here we can control users, who owns what applications, who's the administrator, and you can set up a cluster and stuff like that. So there's also a web front end on the microcloud, which is pretty nice if you want want to fool around with that instead of the command line tool. So now we are getting into the life cycle of maintaining an application which is being deployed to this microcloud. So I'm just going to give you a brief demonstration again by editing the application you saw. And I'm going to use Komodo IDE, which is ActiveState's, it's not a commercial, it's ActiveState's own editor, which is actually pretty nice. It has a graphical debugger. I don't know if you know it, but it's pretty neat. So this is really, really small, but I'm just going to change the text you saw before, saying hello Perlmongers, and say hello.
Does Komodo have color handling?
Yes, but not today.
So please read it out aloud.
Okay, instead of saying hello Perlmongers, I'm going to say hello German Pro Workshop. I've just edited the code in the top. I'm sorry, I really like this black theme, but I'm normally working on my own. Not this sort of extreme pair programming. So you must believe me, I've just changed the code. I'm going to use Komodo to help us out here. Tools, Stackato. And I have this application running up there, as you can see, and I should be able to do an this is the totally new Komodo, so things have changed a bit, so it just got out. So now I'm updating the application. And down here in the bottom you can see a lot of stuff going on. It's again, it's deploying the code and staging it and stuff like that. So we should be able to see the application over here. Yeah, and it actually worked. So maintaining the code, and then when it's deployed, is just a matter of using an update command. And that's actually quite nice. So you can update deployed code when you have minor changes, and you can use, for example, your IDE to do that, where it's integrated. I think they're integrating with Eclipse as well, if you're using an IDE, but Stackato is command line, and also so you can do almost everything. So there's a lot of small things with using a microcloud like this, and that's, for example, DNS, binding DNS. Currently it's using this MDNS, dynamic DNS. Sometimes it has some issues, but you can really get up and running fast. You can bind services like PostgreSQL, MySQL, whatever. You can control resource allocation, memory, and instances, and you can do some stuff with the logging. And I'll get back to that. ActiveState is pretty good at support. They have forums on RSC and webcasts and white papers, and they're really, really friendly and open and helping out. So all of their own examples are on GitHub. I've forked them and fooled around with them, and GitHub is really nice for getting stuff done. So Stackato in itself, the microcloud is not open source, but the ActiveState has promised to keep the microcloud solution free for use in very, very small environments, like on workstations and single node production environments. And I don't know what the pricing scheme is, but the command line, the client I showed you, is open source, is also available on GitHub. Targets is like really, really the coolest thing when looking at this microcloud solution. So you can segregate development, test, and production, and this really makes sense when you're working in the source control management context, where you can, for example, deploy directly from a branch or release, or from trunk, if you do that. So you're always in control of where you are, what code you're deploying. And you could, of course, just have a microcloud locally, and then you wouldn't have, then you could deploy your own PostgreSQL. You do not have to wait for operations people, and you could move on. But you would lose some of the benefits of the targets of deploying, for example, to production if that you're allowed to do that. So this could be a setup which looks a lot like the one we have where I work. We're 2 developers. We could have each our own microcloud, and when we're done developing our own branches, for example, we could merge and then put it into a test cloud where it could be up for acceptance test or something like that, or a bug test. And then when we're done, the operations people could deploy the same code from the tag in Subversion, which we're using. It could be Git into production, and all using the same command line tools or IDEs. I think operations people prefer command line tools. So, but there's even more. There's actually a built-in app store. Let's see if this works. So that's really funny. You can actually have your own app store when it works. And that's just simply a matter of configuration. Currently it's pointing to applications, the example applications are developed by ActiveState, and they are in a GitHub repository. But that means that you can log into the microcloud and say, we want this application here, this application here, this application. And you can then configure what should be offered in your own app store for your own clouds. There you go. So we could, for example, say, we want to look at issues. Let's skip it. But that's sort of the concept. So it's actually just a matter of configuration pointing to these applications, and they're offered in the App Store. And that would mean that all your operations people would have to do is to go shopping. Whatever you developers would offer in your shop. So that's pretty nice. I've been evaluating this from a Perl perspective, and we're using Oracle. And I had some issues with using Oracle as a service because the drivers are not available as such. I don't know if you try to compile DBD Oracle, it can be a lot of fun. But I actually got it to work. Since it's a Ubuntu and the instant client libraries are available for Linux. There's some issues with cryptographic components. ActiveState are based in Canada. And from the States and Canada, you're not allowed to export binary components with cryptographic contents. But you can get it to work, but not just out of the box. Deployment of your own custom components also works, because we have a huge code base which we reuse, and it was actually quite nice to be able to deploy that, even though it's not a part of the application itself, but something we want to link in. All the examples on GitHub are in Modulicious Lite. I prefer Modulicious for bigger stuff, and actually got that to work too. I went logged into the microcloud, which is a Ubuntu, and got central syslogging to work, so our operations people were really satisfied with it and get all the logging information as well to a central log server. I'm currently, I've stopped it right now, I've been busy, but in a Hobbit project I've been trying to integrate with PostgreSQL and with a service binding, and that was a bit magical, but it seems to work. I have some issues on OS X. I have several issues, as you can see, with my choice of colors, but also with the dynamic DNS. But it might be just me, but it seems to have improved now with the few latest releases. But there seems to be some issues with Staccato's use of MDNS and Apple's Bonjour, which sometimes interfere with each other. I'm not sure, but it might just be me. So the Stackato cloud is really awesome, and the ActiveState are really serious about it. I'm proposing this where I work for our future platform, part of our infrastructure, and well, it's easy and controlled access to platform and runtimes and frameworks, so you don't have to have operations people setting up these virtual machines for you all the time, and the process for deploying code is the same as whether you want to do it into test or development. or production, and the amount of magic is kept at an absolute minimum because it's pretty transparent. So developers become self-driving when it comes to infrastructure because the microcloud is running on their own machine or on some virtual machine which they can actually control. Deploying applications become actually just a one-click of thing. And you can have uniformity between all your environments so they don't differ. You have to set this variable or something like that, or you have to change, you have to have these components in order to push something to test instead of production or development or something like that. And that's really, really nice. And it's unintrusive. So if you, for one day, don't want to use Stackato, but still want to develop in Catalyst or Modulicious, you can still do that. The toolchain is unbroken. And it does scale into the cloud if you want to do that. So, this is me, and I will put the slides on SlideShare, and you're more than welcome to write me. And these are all the references I used. Any questions? Yes?
It looks very impressive, but I would have appreciated some example of a rollback. So, you know, you did the update, and the rollback is kind of fetching the old version from Git or Subversion, whatever you do.
A rollback would it depend on what your scenario would be. The question is, how would you do a rollback? For example, if you are working as I propose from a SCM perspective, then I would simply jump into the previous release and do a deployment from there.
You can update.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. You could stop the service if you've done something really horrible, and then start it when you have deployed. So now you saw that the service automatically started. It actually detects whether the service was started when it deploys. So you can say whether it should start or not. And it tries to find out what the previous state was. So if you had stopped it and pushed a new one, if I seem to remember correctly, it will not automatically start. Yeah. Any other questions? Do you want to know the color theme I'm using for my... No. It's pretty nice. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else. Thank you very much.